I don't know if you follow a Grace Church or me personally on Facebook or any of the social media, you might have known that I almost got killed on Thursday morning by a 15-foot wave. I think there was a tsunami offshore, and it was really, really bad. Not really, but I do want to start off by showing you guys this video. Really cool. Every year that we go to Guatemala, we go to different feeding centers and see all that Manna is doing through local churches pastored by Spanish-speaking pastors. And that way it's not viewed like the Americans are the ones who are bringing hope. We want to keep the focus on Jesus. So we try to find godly men and women who are from their country and empower them, give them training to help their countrymen, their neighbors, the people that they love and care about in their community, find and follow Jesus. So we do that in different places. So one of the days we always go to this place called I forget. Rama Blanca is where it is, but that's a black sand beach, so because of the volcanoes that are in the area. Which is, you think it's really, really cool to be at a black sand beach, because if you've never seen a black sand beach before, except black sand soaks up the heat really, really, really bad. So we run on tiptoes all the way out to the water. We run on tiptoes all the way back. But the night before, I found out that there was a guy who's a part of our church. He's actually in the service today. And who had come to faith in Jesus, had devoted himself to turn from his disobedience towards God and selfishness towards others to begin following Jesus, and hadn't been baptized underwater yet. So he said, can I do this tomorrow at the ocean? And I'm like, yeah, definitely we could do that. It was great. So we got to do this baptism. And then when we did the baptism and Matt came out of the water, there's another girl who had become a follower of Jesus about a year ago. And she said, I haven't done this either. Can you baptize me too? And I said, no, the water's too dangerous. Sorry. You can't follow Jesus. And she doesn't follow Jesus now, so that's just the way it goes. I'm kidding. Here's the video, though, of the baptism. I wanted to share it with you guys. Now, to be fair, that's like a 10-foot wave. That wave was like a 2-story building. It was gigantic. I look so old in that. What the heck, man? Like I got depleted by a little wave. It's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. But let me tell you what's really happened. Like there's some thermodynamic science stuff happening here. Most beaches are like this, so the waves come gently rolling up. The beach there in Guatemala has like a 45-degree angle. It's really like you can't go swimming there. They don't like you. That's not a swimming beach because the what's the word where it takes you, the what? The undercurrent. I was gonna say backdraft. I think that has to do with fire. Totally something different. Yeah, the undercurrent is so strong there, like the waves, the height of the wave, it goes from like you could be standing there in like chest deep wave, and in between the waves it'll go all like just standing in one. It was crazy. Like we're doing this, the water's up to your chest, and then you just stand in one spot, and in between the waves it goes all the way down to your ankles, and then all the way back up. Like it's insane. The undertow is so strong there. So even that guy Matt, his name's Matt, he's got lots of big muscles and everything. He tried to jump over a wave like a few minutes later. Like you saw me clear the wave, his feet didn't clear the wave. That wave came in so strong that it kind of flipped him, and he did a face plant in the wave. So we were all laughing at him too. So what I was really worried about was that beautiful sombrero I had. It's not like Mexico sombrero, but like in Guatemala they're just a lot smaller. It's actually a gambler hat. I bought that. Like I wanted something. Like we worked out, did some concrete. All the guys were getting burns on their neck. They were making fun of me wearing my old man hat. But then I was making fun of them when they had sunburns and homeboy was still chilling, right? So like I knew what I was doing when I was going, but it's a newer hat. I've only had it for a couple of months. And so that's what I was worried about. So when I started to baptize him, I realized I'm about to lose my favorite hat. So screw you, bro. I'm keeping this. And I still lost that hat. Yeah, so like they taught us in Bible college, like when you baptize somebody, help them get up, right? But that time he had to help the baptizer get up. So basically, I've been rebaptized. So I guess I'm all set too. Anyway, we're in this series on Not Your Average, and we're talking about not having an above average life. And we're not talking about making an above average salary or having an above average car. It's not like I'm too good to have what everybody else has. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the quality of our relationships. And I believe that we've seen from the scriptures that God's plan for you is to have an above average life. And healthy relationships are possible. They just don't come natural to us. That's the idea behind this series. So what can we do to do things in a different way? How can we have an above average marriage, an above average relationship with our kids, our fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend, our coworkers, our neighbors? And today we're talking about the idea of influence, how to have an above average life in the way that we leverage our life to make a difference rather than just living to make a dollar. And that video would never have happened without somebody else's influence. Now, Matt became a part of that was the guy I was baptizing there. Matt showed up at Grace Church about a year ago because somebody that he cuts hair for had talked to him about God. Dave is my neighbor, Dave Massarelli. He's in this service. And by the way, thank you guys for being here today. Those of you guys who are on Facebook, thank you for joining us online also. But Dave is my neighbor, and he came to faith in Jesus. I mean, he always kind of believed in God, but the truth is he was kind of hoping to be a good enough guy that when he made it, God would go, oh, okay, I'll let you in. But when it kind of dawned on him through the scriptures that God's question isn't, have you done more good than bad? No judge ever asked that. So God as judge just asked, are you innocent or guilty of sin? And Dave recognized, like I recognize, like a lot of us have recognized, that when we stand before God, even if we never sin again from this day forward, we can't ever say to God with a straight face that we're innocent of sin. I mean, we're not sin is breaking God's laws and being selfish towards each other. We've all disobeyed at least one of the commandments, and we've all been selfish at least to one other person, so our answer is going to be, I'm guilty. Now, because God is a good judge, He will allow somebody to take your place, but it can't be somebody else who's guilty. If the judge is going to let somebody take the place of somebody who's guilty, it would have to be somebody who is not guilty, somebody who is innocent, and that's why we need Jesus. Well, it was a few years ago when all of that kind of like settled in Dave's heart, like it had settled in my heart, like it settled in some of your heart. And in that moment, he transferred his faith off of his own ability to be good enough, off of his, and I don't know what your faith is in. Maybe your faith is in your baptism, or you went through confirmation classes, or something like you did some type of religious ritual. And the truth is, your faith is in that religious ritual. It's not in Jesus. Or maybe you think that you can be good enough to make it to heaven. So the truth is, your faith is in you. Like as long as you think you can be good enough to go to heaven, then who is your faith and trust in? It would be in you. So each one of us have to get to a place at some point where we're willing to transfer our faith and our trust off of us and our own goodness, or off of the religious rituals or whatever religion we're from, and place that faith and trust in Jesus, or we stand before God condemned, right? So when that dawned on him, it changed his life, and that's a process, and God's still in the process of changing his life. You can ask his wife for more details on that. He's still in process. And we're all in that process of living, loving, giving, and serving more like Jesus lived, loved, gave, and served. But this should make a difference in the way that we live. It should. And so it's been making a difference in the way that Dave lives. And so he's getting his haircut at Next Level in Stoughton Center, because what Stoughton Center needs is another barber shop. We've got, I think, barber shops. I think it's the number one industry of Stoughton is cutting hair. So at one of those, Next Level, it's a very popular place. Dave gets his haircut in there. Matt was his barber. And Matt and Dave just begin somewhat of a friendship between client and whatever, business guy. And so they just start talking and they become friends. And just because it's a part of who Dave is, his relationship with God comes up, because everybody talks about God. It's just that they're not comfortable talking about God to everybody, right? Atheists I think atheists are more obsessed with God than even Christians are obsessed with God. They definitely talk about him more. You know what I mean? So everybody talks about spiritual things. It's just that they only want to talk about spiritual things to people that they're comfortable with. Dave became that comfortable guy for Matt the barber. And so it kind of came out about Dave's faith, his relationship with God, and the way that it's growing. And I don't know everything about that conversation, but Dave invited Matt to become a part, to show up at Grace Church. And so Matt started attending Grace Church about a year ago, and then Matt ends up going on this mission trip with us to Guatemala. And he recognized that he still needed to be biblically baptized underwater. A lot of us were baptized as kids, and that was our parents' way of bringing us into faith. But at some point, you need to own your own faith. You know what I mean? It needs to become your own. And so that Matt knew that. So Matt, I need to own this for myself. So on Wednesday, he said, hey, when we go to the ocean tomorrow, I think I need to be baptized. Can I be baptized in the ocean? We're like, yeah, absolutely. So all of that happened as the result of the influence of Dave the welder, right? I think that's the way that God intends for all of us to live, making a difference more than we just make a dollar. You know what I mean? But we're distracted by that. And every once in a while, we get like a really, really beautiful picture like this to remind us that our lives were intended by God to be lived for His glory and for the good of others, more than even the good of ourselves. What I want you to do on your communication card, if you grabbed one when you walked in, is I want you to write down on the back of it, there's some places for notes. I want you to write down the name of the person who's had the greatest influence on your life that you're not related to. I'll give you a second to do that. Those of you guys who are on Facebook, maybe you'll put on there the name of the person that's influenced you the most. Share with everybody else who's on watching live with you. And what I want you to do is I want you to think, what was it about them that gave them that kind of influence in your life? What was it about them? Maybe it was the amount of patience. Maybe that they confronted you in an area that nobody else was willing to confront you about. Maybe it was they were more generous. Maybe it was because of the way that they were willing to overlook the mistakes of your past, or maybe they had been through some of the stuff that you've been through. Maybe they gave you more time than what other people were willing to give. What was it? And my question is, what if God intends your name to be written down on somebody else's paper? What would it take for that to happen? The first funeral I ever did, I was a youth pastor in Denver, and my next door neighbors who were not religious but knew that I was, their mom died. And she was an older lady. When you're in your 20s, everybody over 35 is like really old. So I thought of her as like really old, but now I'm like thinking that she was probably in her mid-60s, which the older I get, the younger old people are to me. So anybody else feel me on that? But I look like an old dude in that video. I hate that. Like the way I'm like, I got a bad hip, and you could see it in that. And I got knocked over by a wave. Only old people get knocked over by waves. Young and sexy people don't get knocked over by waves. But in my head, I'm still young and sexy. But on the outside, my body said, nah, not so much. Not so much. So I'm doing this, sorry, that's a little sidetrack. I'm doing this wedding, or this funeral, that's a whole other thing. Well, maybe they're the same, I don't know. Sorry, that was an inappropriate joke. It was inappropriate. But there were 30 people at her funeral, and I found out that everybody there was related to her. And the whole time I'm doing this funeral, all I could think of is, dear God in heaven, let my life count to one person that doesn't have to come to my funeral because they're related to me. Right? How do I live that life? Because I don't know anything about this lady, and I don't even know her name. I don't, and it's been so long since I lived in Denver that I don't even remember my neighbors' names. I remember that their son's name was Sean, because it's a great name, but I don't remember the parents' names, and it's like I'm not being mean or cruel. I'm just saying I don't know that she did it right. Like nobody's life was like. I want my life to bring value. Is like I want to count. I want to make a difference. And I hope that isn't like driven by pride and that I'm better than other people, so that's why I hope that's not the motivation, but I think that's probably common. Like, I would hope you would want your life to count. That's all I'm saying. It's like, I don't need to be famous. I don't need to be remembered. Nobody needs to name babies after me. My kids don't even need to do that. I'm just saying, I just want the world to have been a little bit better off because I lived on it, and I think that would be God's plan for all of us. I think that's what God, each one of the disciples that Jesus called, he said, follow me, and you know what I'm going to do with you? He didn't say, I'm going to give you a better life than everybody else. He said, follow me, and I'll make you a fisher of other men. That's what he said. He said, follow me, and I will use you to make a difference in the lives of other people so that they have an opportunity to follow me also. I believe that God's plan for all of us is to make a difference in the lives of all of those around us. That's what I think. That's what we're going to look at. It starts in Romans chapter 12. If you've got your Bible, go ahead and turn to Romans chapter 12. We're going to be reading in verse 2. And today is the first day that I'm using readers, all right? I used these last night, and somebody said, oh, are those new? No, they're not you. I've been using these for about a year now. I've just been too vain to use them in front of you. But like last few weeks, I've been reading my Bible like this. Like I'm folding it my arms aren't long enough anymore for my eyes. So now I have to use these. But now I'm very eyeglass conscious because I've never really used them in public before. So I don't know if I should look at you like this or look at you like this. Like I don't want to look at you like this because like this like reinforces the old thing that I'm struggling with. So I don't want to do this, but do I take them off every time? I go like, by Jove, I think he's got it. Like, if I want to make like a dramatic point, I know that you take your glasses off and you put them across your body. And you can like look really pensive and smart when you go, uh-huh. But then that tastes gross. Like, all my earwax is on the inside, so why does the outside taste so bad? There's some science in that. Somebody find that out for me, right? But like, I don't like, do I do like this and then I go like this and leave them like that? But then they slide down. Like I don't, so I'm very eyeglass aware. It's going to be very awkward today. But hopefully in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing it naturally. Like I don't really know what to do with, do I, so like when I read it and then I want to say something, I'm just going to be weird about it, all right? So, but in a couple of weeks, I'm going to figure it out, all right? So, okay. Crap. Romans 12, verse 2. Here's what it says. All right, here we go. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you. And I'm going to stop right. See, now I'm like obsessing about it. All right. When that word but, when it says, see, I'm making a point. I'm going to have to put these down. I need transition contacts. Do they make those? I don't know if they make that. That would get upside down, and then that would be really weird. All right, sorry. Anyway. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you. That but there, it's a transitional thought. So I'm going to say, listen, this is the opposite of that. So your ability or your desire to let go of the customs of behavior of this world is conditional on God transforming you. And the truth is, some of you guys who become followers of Jesus have gotten stuck spiritually because of your unwillingness to let go of things that other people are doing that you know you shouldn't be doing. Your unwillingness to let go of the behaviors and customs that are commonplace with everybody else but should not be a part of the life of those who are followers of Jesus is the reason why some of us have gotten stuck. There are things in your life that you know are wrong before God. There are sites you go to online. There are TV shows on paid channels that you watch. There are conversations that you're having. There are people you haven't forgiven. There's acts of generosity that you've withheld. You know this because when I'm bringing up the things in your life that right now shouldn't be there, you're thinking of probably of something specific that God's already been speaking to your heart about. And what I'm telling you is your willingness to let go of the customs and behavior of this world is what then makes the path clear for God to begin transforming you. And so if you're praying right now and you're a follower of Jesus, you've had that all-in moment where you've transferred your trust off of your own ability to be good onto Jesus. There's already been that all-in moment between you and God. But you're right now in a place where you're feeling like you're praying and it's just bouncing off the ceiling and God ain't hearing you at all. That might be not on God's side, but yours. You're asking God to give you steps 2, 3, and 4 when He told you step 1 6 months ago and you still ain't taking that one. And He ain't going to give you step 2 to be disobedient on when you're still being disobedient on step 1. Why would God give you more to be disobedient about? See, if you're faithful with little, you'll be faithful with much. But if you're unfaithful with little, you'll be unfaithful with. Why would God give you more to be irresponsible with? Why would He give you more to mismanage? So some of us honestly are stuck simply because of our prideful rebellion and disobedience towards God. And we're going to stay stuck until we make a choice on whether or not we're going to forgive that person. And we're going to sit here in our own mess until we do. Until we forgive them. Until we're generous. Until we're kind. Until we love. Until we serve. Until we put boundaries on ourselves. Until we give our wife our passcode to our cell phones and our computers. Until we move the computer out of our bedroom and out of the office and into the living room. Until we cut off that inappropriate relationship at work. Until what? Until we break up with that person. Possibly. You see what I'm saying? But it's your willingness to let go of the behaviors and customs of this world that are keeping you from being transformed by God. These become barriers in our relationship with Him. He said, but the alternative to hanging on to the customs and behaviors of this world is to allow God to transform you by the renewing of your mind. He'll begin to change the way that we think and feel when we choose to let go of the things that have become barriers in our relationship with Him. When you let God transform you, that is when we move from average to extraordinary. Today we're specifically talking about influence. We want to live lives that make a difference in the lives of other people. We want our own Matt stories. I believe that God has Matt stories planned for your life for you to experience. Now, whether or not you get to experience them or not is really up to you and your willingness to follow what the Scriptures have to say, what God wants for you in your life. And when we think about making a difference in the world, when we think about influencing, I think that we too easily think of Guatemala and Mongolia and Sierra Leone, Africa. By the way, those are the 3 trips that we're doing this year. Mongolia is in August. That trip is filled up. There's no room for any more. I tried to sign up for that, and Taylor said, I'm sorry, you missed the cutoff. I go, I'm the preacher. He goes, I'm sorry, there's a cutoff. So apparently I needed to sign up sooner. So I'm going to try to go to Africa. There's nobody signed up for Africa, and that's in October. Because we haven't been pushing it. We haven't been telling people about it. So you're notified. So if you want to go on, the only other trip that you can take this year with Grace Church is the Africa trip, and that's in October. If you want information, write that down. But I think we too easily think about, like when it talks about making a difference in the world, we're thinking like way, way, way big. But what if God isn't going to give us the way, way, way big until we start with right now where we're at? I mean, if we're not making a difference in the lives of those who are closest to us, why would God give us more opportunity to make a difference in the lives of people who are far away from us? Remember that faithful little, you'll be faithful with much deal. What if God's plan is for you right now at your workplace to be the greatest influence for the glory of God and the good of others at work? What if God's biggest plan for your life was on Seaver Street? Well, that's my street. That's where I live. But what if God's biggest plan for you to make a difference in the lives of others is in PTO or Stoyak basketball or Stoughton Youth Baseball League or, pick your own town and your own programs, your own ways to get involved. But what if that's where it's supposed to start? You know what's going to keep you from that? It's how much all of the people who are closest to us drive us stinking crazy. Am I right? Think about it. The closer somebody gets to you, the more they drive you absolutely stinking nuts. Can I get an amen? I know you're feeling it, right? The closer we get to them, the more they drive us nuts. You loved everybody at work until you got to know everybody at work, right? I mean, everybody's great until you get to know them. And they're so complicated and they're messy and they got so much drama. And truthfully, so much baggage. What if that was the number one thing? I think that there are 3 mindsets that we're born with by default that limit our ability to influence other people. And I just want to call those out. I want to let you know why these. I want you to identify the areas of your life where you're like this, because until you can name the problem, I don't think that you can deal with the problem, right? So the first mindset I think that limits our ability to influence other people is that I feel like I need to protect myself from people. I think that's our default setting. What do you want? What do you want? Right? Somebody meets us, what do you want? Whoa, easy, what do you want? We've got to protect ourselves from people, and that comes from it possibly being hurt in the past. And you have a legitimate reason to be skeptical of other people's motives. So do I. But the higher we build those walls between us and other people, the lower impact we have on them. Does that make a difference? Does that make sense to you? Like when we try to protect ourselves, the people we're trying to protect ourselves from might be the people that God intended us to have the biggest influence on. Right? So that idea that everybody wants something. that defensive posture that we take towards other people is a mindset that really will limit your ability to influence other people. The second mindset, I think, that limits our ability to influence other people is that we look at people as tools to be leveraged to get stuff rather than stuff as tools to be leveraged to benefit people. And the way that shows up is I feel like the first is I must protect myself. The second is I must benefit from this relationship. I feel this happen all the time. We kind of size each other up. And the people that we feel can benefit us most at work or at school with our popularity or whatever it is, those are the people whose relationships we're more interested in pouring effort and energy into. And the people that give us least benefit, we spend less time on. And it's a good thing God didn't look at it that way when it came to his relationship with us, because truthfully, what do I have to bring to the table that God needs? Absolutely nothing. I've got nothing to offer him that he needs from me. He's the God, the creator and sustainer of everything that is in existence. What has little Sean got to bring to the table? That guy's like, finally, I got somebody to take care of this for me. Right? But that's the way, I think that's our default setting. I feel that happen all the time in town. When I was on the Stoic board, people were like, when they knew that I was on the Stoic board, they'd be nice, whatever. People are generally nice anyway, but, and I'll feel them like do that again, and then they find out that I'm not on the board anymore, and I can't get their, I can't influence whether or not they become the coach of the travel team or not, and then I'm not as valuable to them. And so, they still say hi, but they're not pouring into the relationship as much because I don't have as much to offer them as I did before. And we do this all the time. You want to be liked by the people that everybody else likes at work. Why? Because that improves your social standing at work or in school or that's what I'm talking about. I need to benefit from this. But then we're overlooking the people with whom we could potentially have the greatest impact on. The third mindset that hinders our ability to influence other people is our need to control. I must control. I must protect. I must benefit. I must control. And that's a desire I think all of us have also. I need to control their, like when people don't respond the way I want them to respond, I get really frustrated with that. The greatest source of frustration in your life is going to be unmet expectations. That's just what it comes down to. If they behaved the way you thought they were going to behave, you wouldn't have gotten as frustrated as you actually got. But the reason why you're so frustrated at work is you expected them to do it differently. The reason why you're so frustrated with your kids is you expected them to do it differently. The reason why you're so so frustrated with your spouse is you think they should be doing it a different way. So unmet expectations is the source of our greatest frustrations. So to compensate for that, we try to control their responses because people are complicated. They bring chaos and drama, and so we try to manipulate the circumstances, and often we try to manipulate our relationships with them. And the more we try to control and manipulate other people, the less influence they're actually going to give to us. So since those are the three mindsets that limit our ability to influence other people, I want us to correct or to reset our expectations. If we can go into our relationships with accurate expectations, it will limit our frustration with other people, then hopefully give us at least more time to make more of a difference in the lives of other people. And when I look at the scriptures for people who are complicated or people who are high maintenance as it relates to their relationship with Jesus, I think the best example would be Peter and his relationship to Jesus. Of all the disciples, Peter was the biggest, I think the most needy. He was the neediest of the disciples. He was the one who was always saying the wrong things. He was the one who was most socially awkward. Like he was always opening his mouth when he should have kept his mouth shut, and he was keeping his mouth shut when he should have said something. And I know that Peter's probably the most famous of all the disciples. You got St. Peter's Basilica. The Catholics say that Peter was the first pope. I mean, but truthfully, Peter was never even a pastor of a local church. James was the pastor of the first church of Jerusalem, so I don't really know where all of that comes from. I'm just saying he's the most famous of all the disciples and also probably the most complicated. There's more, like I think about the interactions between Jesus and Peter and any of the other disciples, and it was always a little bit messy. So I think there's a few things that we can learn in setting our expectations and our relationships with complicated people from Jesus and his complicated relationship with Peter. The first one is in Matthew chapter 4. There's three things, if we're going to reset our expectations when it comes from with other people. The first one is this: people are going to disappoint you. Write it down. People are going to disappoint you. Expect it. Your husband is going to disappoint you. Your wife is going to disappoint you. Your kids are going to disappoint you. Your boss is going to get, and I don't know what it is. We go to a new relationship and we feel like they will complete us until they don't. All that happens now, we just doubled the amount of baggage that we have to deal with now. Before, we were just having to deal with ours. Now we're dealing with ours and theirs. And people will disappoint you. Jesus had found out in Matthew chapter 4, we're not going to read it for the sake of time, but if you're in a life group, you guys will probably go over this story. Jesus had found out that his cousin, John the Baptist, had been beheaded by Herod. The Bible said that he just wanted to get some alone time. If your best friend died, you just want some alone time too. But the Bible said that the crowds were coming to Jesus. He looked on them, felt compassion, and he spent the day healing them. And the feeding of the 5,000 happens on this day. At the end of the day, it's been the longest and probably the second most difficult day in the life of Jesus outside of the day that he was tortured to death. That obviously was a worse day. At the end of that day, he sends his disciples in a boat back to Capernaum, and he goes up Bible says he goes up on a mountain by himself to get some alone time with God, to recharge his battery and to fill his tank a little bit. And then he walks out to the disciples on the sea, the Bible says, and there's a huge storm. The disciples see Jesus coming from a long way off, and they think it's a ghost at first, and then Jesus says it's him, and Peter says, if that's really you, then tell me to walk out to you on the water. That's something crazy that Jesus would say to me to do. So why don't you do that? So Bible says that Peter gets out of the water and he starts walking to Jesus on the water. The only person besides Jesus who ever walked on the water was Peter. So the Bible says that when he took his eyes off Jesus and he started looking at the storm around him, he began to sink. There's probably a whole sermon just on that. When we take our eyes off of Jesus, we begin to sink. Right? That's what happens to him. And here's what happens in Matthew chapter 4. I said it wasn't, I'm not going to read the whole story for the sake of time, but actually it's Matthew chapter 14. In Matthew chapter 14, verse 31, here's what it says. Bible says, Matthew chapter 14, verse 31, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him by the hand and he said, you have so little faith. Jesus said, why did you doubt me? So people are going to disappoint you. They're going to let you down. They're not going to be as stand up as you needed them to be. They're not going to be there always for you, which leads me to the second thing I learned in this complicated relationship between Jesus and Peter, and that's that people are going to make mistakes. People are going to wrong you. They're going to sin against you. They will hurt you. Your husband is like, and we go into these relationships with what rose-colored glasses is the phrase, where we expect everything to be perfect, and then we get frustrated when they're not. And I don't know why we're so ridiculously optimistic about everybody. People are complicated and they're broken. Expect them to be broken. People are going to hurt you. Your husband is going to sin against you. Your wife is going to sin against you. You've got to expect that. And truthfully, honestly, you need to forgive them for that. They're going to make mistakes. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, and he told the disciples 3 separate times, when I go to Jerusalem, I'm going to be handed over by the Jews to the Romans who will crucify me. I'll die, but 3 days later I'll come back from the dead. Now, 3 different times Jesus said this before they went. On the third time, they're about 2 weeks away. They're 2 weeks out from it actually happening. And Peter says in Matthew chapter 16, then let's not go to Jerusalem. And Jesus turns around, looks right at Satan, and he says, get behind me, Satan. You are a tempter of evil. You are the source of all that is bad in my life right now. And other people will be that. Your spouse at some point will be the source of all that is wrong in your life. Your kids will be that for you. Your parents at some point, listen, your mom and dad, and truthfully, kids only think that their parents are perfect until they hit middle school. They get to high school and think their parents are total idiots. They get to college and realize, oh my word, it's amazing how much you guys have learned in the last 4 years, mom and dad. Right? That's just the way that it goes. Your parents are flawed people. They're not perfect parents. They're going to make a mistake when they get onto you, and sometimes they're going to be wrong. We've got to cut them some slack. The third expectation we need to set is that people by nature are selfish. We are, and so are they. Jesus, in his relationship with Peter in Matthew chapter 14, this is the night where he's actually going to be betrayed. says to his three closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, he says, listen, I've been praying for you guys for years, and I've been serving you guys for 3 years. All I need you to pray with me. Please, just pray for me. Pray for me this time. Jesus knew he was about to be betrayed. He knew that he was just a couple of hours away from being tortured to death. And the idea of wanting to skip what was coming next was really struggling. Like that was playing around in his head. So he said to these two guys, I need you to pray for me. But they were tired. They didn't want to stay awake, so they fell asleep. Jesus comes back and he goes, fellas, listen, I've served you for 3 years. I need you to serve me just 1 hour. But fellas, please, dear God in heaven, please pray for me for the next hours. And they were I'm just too tired. People are selfish. They're going to put their needs above your own. I don't know why Christians are so shocked when people who are not Christians don't act like Christ. And I think one of the things that limits our ability to influence other people is when we impose our values on people who don't have them. You can't expect people who are not Christians to act like Christ. Don't be so shocked every time they swear. And quit trying to modify their behavior if you're not willing to invest in their life. Shut your mouth. People who are publicans and notorious sinners and hookers and all the worst of Jesus' day, his society, were attracted to him. And that bothered religious people that Jesus was so comfortable around people who are so not religious. But truthfully, one of the things that you can do that makes you not like Jesus is expect everybody who don't follow him to act like him. You don't either. Stop it. People are going to be selfish. And the fourth thing, reset your expectations. Number one is that people won't be there for you and they will sin against you. And they are selfish and they will betray you. Jesus was betrayed by Peter 3 times on the night that he was tortured. 3 different times Peter said, I don't know him. I don't know him. And the third time he says, blankety blank, blank, I don't know him. Peter betrayed Jesus more than every other disciple did. And Jesus did not let the mistakes of Peter's past keep him from serving him in his present to make a difference in his future. And we can't let the mistakes of other people in their past change our behavior in the present, or we'll lose our opportunity to influence their future. You can't let the mistakes of your husband's past, you see what I'm saying? Your wife's past, your boss's past, change the way that you're willing to serve them in your present, or you won't have any influence on their future. The same is true. So I want to give you 3 things that I learned from Jesus that we can do right now to grow our capacity to influence other people and make a difference. Tangibly, what can I do? All right, if I change these mindsets, I'm like, what can I do right now that would help me influence the lives of other people? How can I make a difference in the world? 3 things I'm going to give you. Number 1 is this. Focus on the person, not their problems. Focus on the person, not their problems. Philippians chapter 2 says this. Let me get there. It's in here somewhere. Philippians chapter 2. Here it is right here. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 through 5 says this. Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress other people. Man, that's hard, isn't it? Don't be selfish. All right, that's generically like what all of us, I'm not a selfish person. But don't try to impress other people. I don't want to wear my glasses because I want to impress people. You know what I mean? And I really do care about the likes of my pictures on Instagram. So do you. We all struggle with that. He says, listen, this is going to limit your ability to influence. This is going to keep you from the person I'm calling you to be. Don't be selfish and don't try to impress people. But he's not saying don't care what other people think. That's not what he's saying. He said don't care so much about what they think about you, though. Okay? Be humble. Think of others as better than yourselves, and I think all of us struggle with that. Think of other people. Listen, your problem in your marriage might stay this way until you begin to treat your wife like she's better than you. Until you come to see your husband as more important than you. As your parents is more important than you. Now I just went from preaching to meddling right there. This is probably where the rubber meets the road. We don't want to treat nobody like they're better than us. Ain't nobody better than me. How many times have we said that to ourselves? How many times have we been told to say that to ourselves? Dude, that is ungodly. I didn't get a single amen on that one, by the way, just for the Facebook crowd. Ain't nobody here liking this stuff. Ain't nobody liking it. I don't like it either. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. Why? Because that's the attitude Jesus had. See, God's not asking you to do anything He didn't already do first for you. For you. Good thing He don't focus on our problems, or He'd have never picked us. Would He have? He loved us in spite of all of our crap is what He did. In fact, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 says that. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 26 says this. He says, look around. He says, look at everybody who's here. So we could probably say the exact same thing. Look at everybody who's here, he says. I just did that with my teeth. You did that I just did that like a pro. All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 26. Remember, dear brothers and sisters, that few of you were wise in the world's eyes or powerful or wealthy when God called you. I'm going to read verse 27 to 28, but it won't be on the screen. Instead, God chose things the world considers foolish in order to shame those who think they're smart. He chose things that are powerless to shame those who are strong. God chose things despised by the world, things counted as nothing at all, and used them to bring to nothing what the world considered important. God didn't look at your problems. He looked at you as a person. That's something you can do. You can stop focusing on the problems. Yes, your husband's got problems. But chicks, so do you. Fellas, that's your chance to amen, and you all missed it. Right there. Everybody in this room got issues. And if we keep focusing on the issues, we ain't never going to help none of us. Does that make sense? There's a kid named Travis in our student ministry who in 6th grade was an alcoholic. His dad was an alcoholic. His mom died of cirrhosis. He'd be picked up from school at 3 o'clock, and he'd have to stay in the car at the bar until his dad got too drunk, ran out of money and would take him home. His dad was a painter, get paid under the table, so he had cash every day, and he'd blow it at the bar. Travis wasn't allowed out of the car to even pee. Travis later on told me about a time where he had to pee, so he got out, and he hid on the other side of the car, and he peed against the tire, and his dad came out to check on him and saw that he was outside the car and beat the living mess out of him. So I get that, you know what I mean? And so Travis's dad, Jim Pinna, becomes a follower of Jesus when Travis is in the 6th grade. And man, guy carries an unbelievable amount of guilt over the sin in his life, but let go of liquor the day he turned to Jesus. Changed his whole life. He couldn't change his past, but he could do something different in his present to change his kid's future. But his kids rebelled against it. The change in their dad, like they couldn't process that. So Travis started coming to church with his dad because his dad's now a follower of Jesus. And dang it, I'm going to get my kids in church. Jesus can help them too. Travis is a 7th grader, comes to our middle school youth group, literally flipping me off sometimes in the middle of my sermon. He'd be sitting there like this, and he'd just go. Now, I did that with the other finger, all right? I'm saying he would do that. And he would intentionally drop the F-bomb when he'd walk in, and he just drove me nuts. I wanted to, have you ever wanted to kill a middle schooler? Jesus said, if you've hated somebody in your heart, you're guilty of murder. Homeboy should be in prison. I wanted to kill that kid. It was the hardest thing in the world to focus on the person because there were so many problems. After 9th grade, Travis went to youth group with us, or went to youth camp with us, and gave his, After 9th grade, Travis became a follower of Jesus. And today, he and his wife have 4 kids, and he's an elder at Calvary Chapel, Aurora, Colorado, raising his kids to follow Jesus. Glory to God. But there's a Travis in your future, and if all you're looking at is everybody else's crap, you're going to completely miss your Travis story. But I'm telling you, you've got one. God has a Travis story planned for you. But until you can get past other people's problems, you're never going to get it. You criticize and criticize and criticize and hate and hate and hate and hate and hate and hate. Listen, bro, everybody's broken. Somebody's got to be the healer instead of the accuser all the time. And that's going to keep you from being the person that God called you to be. It's going to limit your influence. You're never going to. Second thing that you can. Chapter 4, verse. That. Who they That's supernatural. Honestly, by God. Love unlovable that you can forgive for unforgivable things. It's on who they are. Gideon, you busted my least important. In Jesus. Leave the broken you capacity you have. Glory to God. Loves them no matter what you could. God transfer. If you could let go, you could be to them as been to you. They did turn from their sin and brokenness to begin following Jesus. What greater the evidence? We were playing basketball. You didn't belong here. You didn't come here anymore. Conversation, like I said, I had invited. I mean, say it any other. healthy conversation and conversation gets outside his class. God used to change his life, but truth, quit your school doing you right. If you could move to a street and nobody on your street missed for you, others, you're missing the point. Opportunity. My third time. Each love me, yes. Love you. Then live your life to influence others. And then third time, that's when his feelings were hurt. Peter, do you love me? He said, yes, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. He said, then live your life to influence others. That's been the point all along. The goal of your life is not to make you awesome, it's to make God awesome by bringing other people to him. That's it. I'm constantly aware that everywhere I go, like when I go to tryouts in basketball, it weighs on me heavily. When I live in Stoughton, when I meet a new neighbor, do you even know your neighbors? How long have you lived in that house? And you still don't even know them? Don't tell me you love other people when you don't love the people that are closest to you. You're full of crap. You know what I mean? Like this needs to weigh on you, that how I treat people influences whether I know that the greatest good I can bring to them is not make sure their kid is a star basketball team. Apologies before they die from God. They way it should be. The person that you're finding it the hardest to love, the reason why they're so hard to love is that they're apart from God. And he sent you there, not to dollar, but to make a difference. But as long as you keep treating them the way they deserve to be treated, they'll never meet God. Yes, they deserve that. From God, we'd all be screwed. So how could we take grace from him, but not give that grace to others? And that's why make the adjustments necessary. Because it's uncomfortable, truthful, and that's why it's tough. You don't walk away. You forgive again, and in this room have asked you to forgive for the same stinking things over and over and over and over and over and over and over. My stinking. You do for us. Help people that we hate. Don't mean it. Just to pray it. God, I'm thankful that you forgive me, that you bless me. Whether I know that, help me to be that for my wife. Rest of their life. Leverage contact with. This room is
South Metro area of Boston that we got everybody who weekend. Living everybody else does. In our heart, the custom that's keeping us. And I pray that we would admit it to letting it go. Prayer. Name that you've been hanging on God. God, this is it. This is what I struggle with, and I'm sorry, and I want to let it go. Help me let it go. Can you make that your prayer? Think of the person that's hardest to love in your life right now. Can you ask God to bless them? Bless them. It's hard, isn't it? To ask God to bless people that are horrible people. But that's what Jesus said on the Mount. Pray for them who use you. Bless those who despitefully hurt you. Pray for them. God, I'm going to pray it. I don't mean it. I'm going to pray anyway. Awesome. Keep praying until you do mean it. God, change me and change others through me. That's my prayer. And we all pray and say together,